Well, throughout the day, we've heard a lot of yahooing from Labor MPs federally in the state of New South Wales who've been beating up their runaway wins in the New South Wales seat of Strathfield and Bega in yesterday's by-elections. The only problem is in 3 of the 4 seats contested, it was not as emphatic as they would lead us to all believe. Now, if you take Strathfield, for instance, where Labor was expecting to romp it in, a 10% shift against a government after 11 years in power, well, that is a standard measurement for a by-election. Well, no one's explained to me today who Labor or how Labor got a serious scare with Liberal candidate Bridget Saker completely defying the usual by-election swing against the government. In fact, Labor may scrape through after all votes are counted by the end of the week with less than a 1% swing. That is no dire result for the New South Wales Premier or even the federal party. And the PM was quick to talk up those numbers today too.
That there were some very strong local candidates in the state by-elections yesterday. We had the retirement of some very successful local members in Gladys Berejiklian, a former leader, John Barilaro, a former Nationals leader, and you could expect that in those seats there was a very strong following for both of them, and indeed for Andrew Constance. I'd also commend an outstanding job by Bridget Saker in the seat of Strathfield. I mean, this is a Labor-held seat, previously held by the state Labor leader, and this postal's still to come, and Bridget, as you normally get swings against governments in by-elections, and particularly in a Labor-held seat.
Now, at this crucial stage, the Prime Minister would want to accentuate the positive, but he's right. It was a stunning result in Strathfield. There were reasons for what occurred in Monero and also Bega. Now, in Monero, the Nationals held the seat despite the resignation of sitting member and Deputy Premier John Barilaro. That is no headline event. In fact, a huge win for the coalition, I would have thought, again, given the fact that the New South Wales government has been in power for 11 years. And even in Bega, where the Liberal Party lost the seat for the first time in history, mind you, which is not a good look, you still need to dissect the various factors at play there. And this is a place outside of Sydney on the south coast of New South Wales. A 12% swing against the government is not too far away from what is regarded as a normal 10% swing against a government who's been in multiple periods of time. Add to that, Labor was able to put up an exceptional local candidate in Dr. Michael Holland. Now, it's a dream for any political party to be able to get the local obstetrician in a town like Bega to have a tilt at politics. He's trusted, he's knowledgeable, he's sincere, he's known by just about everyone. That's a great coup and a great candidate. And of course, Bega has lost its local member in the former Liberal Minister Andrew Constance, who's running for the federal parliament. Those 3 factors alone will see you lose a seat like that by at least 10%. So no real surprise there, despite some of the reportage today. And locals along the south coast are still dirty with the Morrison government for the way they handled the bushfires. So maybe that's where the other 2% came from, who knows. As for Willoughby, the Liberal Party in New South Wales did take a caning there. An approximate swing of 18% where there was no Labor candidate standing. Now, this is Gladys Berejiklian's old seat, and you heard what the Prime Minister said. Well, she's left the seat. But that doesn't explain 18%, and the Liberal Party will be sitting down and trying to work out why it collapsed that much in Willoughby. Now, Tim James will be the new member. He's not from the area, and he's not a hugely inspiring character either. He should have polled better. Has that got to do with the Premier himself for the way he's run New South Wales in a very brash, go-getter kind of attitude, and his super focus on the New South Wales economy is more than obvious. It could have been a bit of that. It could have been. But today, he was not backing down.
What I am saying in relation to the pandemic is that our approach is the right approach to take our state forward. And my job as Premier is to do what's right, not what is necessarily popular in the middle of a pandemic, and I'll continue to do that. But I think there are certainly lessons to be taken from each of those seats.
Let me put something completely different to you. Has the Liberal Party in New South Wales, under its new Treasurer, the boss of the moderates in the state, Matt Kean, been leaning too far to the left. Now, I've spoken to various rusted-on Conservatives from the Willoughby seat today who pointed to the way the party has tilted since Gladys Berejiklian resigned. And maybe there's also an anti-Liberal Party overflow, possibly from the general sentiment at the moment towards the federal Liberals. Tomorrow, a major research report will be released which will show that confidence in the federal government is at the lowest level since the start of the pandemic. It's embargoed until tomorrow, but it's recorded just 34.5% of Australians having confidence in the Morrison government. That's a tough hill to climb. Whatever the reasons, winning Willoughby was a very hollow victory for the New South Wales Liberal Party. And I'm sure Labor is thinking today that maybe they should have, would have, and could have, if only they'd put a candidate to measure where that sentiment is up to. But for Dominic Perrottet, he now leads a weaker minority government in New South Wales. That is his greatest concern now because he'll have to bargain and trade even harder to get any of his government's policies through the House. And maybe that'll be the same scenario after the federal election in May as well, which will certainly create an Australia totally impeded by its minority governments.